If we haven't met before, I'm Greg Cohen, Corporate Real Estate Advisor at Cressa. This is the start of Season 2 of Conversations of Cohen. And I welcome at the beginning of this season where we're going to dig deep into law firms. So often we get caught up in working in our business that we don't have time to work on our business. So my goal is to share resources and introduce subject matter experts who may help you think differently to help you run your businesses more efficiently. As a way of getting started, Larry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Greg, and thanks for inviting me to be part of your conversation. My name is Larry Marner, Marner Architecture. We've been practicing architecture and interior design specifically with a focus on law firms since 1998. And most recently, in the last 13 years, I would say, been designing space for big law in New York and New Jersey.
So I'm really glad you're on the podcast today because the big question in so many conversations is how are people going to work? And we see law firms based upon things like the Castle card reading data. It says that law firm occupancy is at 50%, north of 50%, which is actually double what we're seeing on average across the board among other industries. So I was hoping you could share with us today what you've learned and what your clients have learned in the last 18, 24 months as a result of the global pandemic. And once we talk about that, thinking about what that means for the future. So maybe we'll break it into parts. Larry,
Sure.
If you could just share some insight to us.
It's
what
really
those conversations
been amazing.
Like?
It's been an amazing time. Here's what I've learned in conversations with managing partners of our clients' firms and partners and associates within those firms. Here we are 18 months out. A year ago, no one knew what to expect. No one wanted this to happen, but now I'm hearing managing partners tell me that this may have been their finest hour. And that's because the firm really stepped up to support leadership. In all cases, all the conversations I've had. Zoom has had a positive effect. It enabled firms to have brief client contact as thought leaders, helping their clients. It allowed people to become more efficient within a firm. Leaders used Zoom to provide that level of communication. Leaders became students of air infiltration and water quality because they learned how important wellness was as a part of their internal organizations and operations. There's probably going to be more change in the next 18 months than in the prior 18 months. I'll say more about that a little later. And I think we, as an architecture firm, learned how resilient the law industry as a whole has proven to be. Many firms have expressed to me that they're coming out of the pandemic better than when they went in. And that's, I think, because lawyers rallied around firm leaders and their clients to prove this resilience and their value to their mission serving their clients. But the re-entry is going to be hard. I don't think, as I said, I think our clients, lack certainty about, as most of us do, about exactly what the future holds. It's really unclear, how much people have been affected, being out of the office, being a little bit out of sync, and what it will be like to come back, as the pandemic plays out. But we know that wellness and educating the team is a priority, and what buildings are doing in terms of the shift in the real estate understandings between building owners and their tenants. What building owners are doing to serve their tenants is also an evolving thing. Right now, we see firms doing fourth quarter evaluations, and my sense is that Labor Day is a real pivot point where they'll come together and try to chart a path for the next several quarters after Labor Day. They understand that the picture is constantly changing.
So, Larry, if I was a managing partner who had a real estate decision to make in the next 2 to 5 years, I would imagine that the way I thought I needed to work and my firm needed to work was different 10 years ago than it is now. So I was hoping you could perhaps share with me what those differences are, most importantly, what they are now, so that we can think about how law firms can work more efficiently with their real estate.
Right. I think, I'll talk first about how firms sound like they will likely be operating going forward, and then what effects that will have on the various parts of their real estate now. I think what's likely is that firms will create an environment within to have more flexibility and more autonomy, but no one will be working fully remotely. So the office, very clearly to me, has a very important function of bringing the firm together and being a kind of a focal point for some clients. But they'll be trying things out over the next period, maybe the next year, and to see what works.
So why is a physical space the focal point? Why does it have to be the focal point?
I think there are multiple reasons within each firm, and each firm has a different culture. But one thing I know about, you're a law student and you just graduate. One of the reasons you choose a firm is because you want to be in that office. You want to be a part of the culture and you want to be there all the time. That's why you went to law school, and that's what you're thinking upon graduation. So for the newest attorneys in a firm, the office has a very important function. I think that what I'm hearing from my clients is that they do not see, while they do see more hybrid work, they don't see a reduction in the amount of conference space. They'll still have a requirement for meetings. They'll still have a requirement for offices. The big thing that's changed on those two fronts are, with regard to client contact spaces, there is a continuing emergence of firms wanting to show their brand, wanting to express outwardly to their clients their thought leadership, their constant usefulness and helpfulness to their clients, achieving their clients' mission. And on the inward-looking side, to promote the growth and retention and recruiting for attorneys, it's important to show that culture on the inside of the firm. And that's done by, it used to be that, you'd walk down a corridor in a law firm, there's sheetrock walls on either side and the doors are all closed. Who's there? How do I have access to people? That's changed a lot, and I think will continue to emerge as, glass-fronted offices allow people to see each other, doors are open, partners are accessible. I think the office serves a function of being able to have those conversations individually or together in groups and teams within the office because people see that they're present. I think Zoom, as I said, is continuing to be an important part of the communication while people are out of the office, but there will still be a requirement for firms to manage, and this is what I hear a lot about, they will be managing the meetings of attorneys internally, such that, a practice group is going to have a schedule of meetings where everyone will be required to come into the office, and you'll be able to plan your schedule in working remotely around when you will be in the office for specific internal and client-related matters. So I think that there will be, firms are stepping up to this idea of organizing around the idea of a flexible hybrid work environment. That's the strategy I hear most about.
So if we assume that conference room open space or conference room space is not, there's no less of it, but we see this move to and we've seen this over the last few years, this move toward a universal standard of the office. Does that equate to, if we have to paint a broad brush, a decrease in space on average
right.
for law firms?
That's, interestingly enough, I've been searching and listening for this. I don't hear that now. I don't hear that the amount of space is going to be reduced. What I hear is that, that may occur, but it's not a part of the conversation right now. Certainly, firms that I'm speaking to are also speaking to their real estate advisors to see what opportunities there are. But there is still a value to the office. There is some conversation about the concept of hoteling, but for the most part, I'm hearing that attorneys are not in favor of sharing offices. So I think that there will be, if there are fewer offices, there'll be other more communication type spaces that replace them.
Understood. So one will offset the other.
Right.
So, we talk about the sublease market and how there are so many opportunities in the sublease market of law firms who may have taken too much space, expansion space, and now are trying to sublet that space, or some of it is older space and they just don't need as much. And the reason I'm asking this question is, if I was a law firm now going to make a real estate decision, is that older, quote unquote, real estate still applicable? Can I still use that as the new workflow as we see the new work flow?
I think for the time being, yes. As I said, I think a number of things are going to be tried. My clients have not, we've not had conversations about, okay, we've decided what we're going to do with our real estate, and here's what it is. Right. In fact, what I'm hearing on the sublease side of things is that there's less subleasing of large law firm space than there is in the rest of the corporate industry in New York and New Jersey. That could change, but I think that going forward, it's really a conversation about an investment in learning. That's what the conversation sounds like to me. And that means, what will we need in our space for mentoring to happen more robustly, continue to happen remotely and within the office? What are some of the communication expectations we should have going forward? I think that, that's a conversation that managing partners are having with the partner groups, with the associate groups, support staff groups, to find out how to, fine tune their culture before they begin to describe and engage with us on how that's going to reshape their space. So it's about learning first about what before we create the space to actually make that happen.
So that's interesting. It's working on the culture before. It's working on the culture first, and what your goals are, and then having the real estate to express those goals.
Yeah, and I would say in every conversation, there's always an emphasis on supporting the client's needs first, and what really is. It's really a wonderful thing that I have heard about now over and over again, that no one knew what it was like going into this, but I hear an expression of pride on the part of lawyers in each of the firms for how they were able to rally around leadership. And I think that will be the lever for them to really go forward. They've really achieved something in the law industry as a whole that I think showed their resilience, and that will propel them, I think, into this new learning stage, in the next few quarters.
So as an advisor, as you are to law firms, and as you guide them on these conversations that they should be having, you've talked about increased, what sounds like to me, an increase in technology spend because of this reliance on communications, mobile communications. You've talked about the retention, the employee retention, and also it sounds like the competition for lawyers is incredibly fierce as people go out to the market to try to add talent. What are some of the other questions if you were sitting with a managing partner, as you are, well, that's the goal really of this, to be putting on them as their sort of top 5 questions that they should be asking internally as they move into this learning? And I'm just trying to lay it out for somebody who's listening so that they can really have a takeaway, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I think that, the questions really revolve around, first of all, I think there's a focus on wellness and retention as it relates to the stress that members of the firm have been under, and that it's something that they know they must pay attention to. And so, that communication, throughout the last 18 months and going forward in the next 18 months, I think is one of the things I'm hearing stressed. I think the, diversity, equity, and inclusion is an important matter for firms, growing in importance. And there will be a focus on that in recruiting members of the firm and retaining members of the firm, with a focus on the importance of that. You mentioned technology. I mean, I think the technology industry that serves the law industry is also stepping up with better communication tools. So I think we're going to see an evolution of that. I think there'll be an evolution in the courts. The courts have broadly, permitted electronic filings, and I think that they will continue to evolve in how law firms will communicate with courts to become more efficient. So I think that there is this focus on efficiency, and they'll double down on focusing on how to serve their clients best, because through communication, electronic communication, like Zoom tools, becoming thought leaders in briefly, published articles has been a huge support system that firms in general have found for their clients. So I think that those are the focus points.
And if we could dig deeper into wellness, so buildings are doing a lot to improve on that wellness, and what we've seen is in the marketplace, specifically in New York City, is a greater divergence between new buildings and old buildings. So what are those characteristics of new buildings that law firms you think will be looking at or are looking at that sort of tick those boxes as we look to improve wellness?
Right. Well, we are experts at well building and at passive design to reduce energy costs. And we know that our clients have been, throughout the pandemic, have become students of air filtration and water quality. And so they know, that a MERV filter is better than a MERV 8 filter, and they're looking for their landlords to install those. In some of the newest buildings in Manhattan, the buildings are designed around a higher level of air quality and water quality. And those building owners believe that that's a hedge in real estate in the future, that they will be out in front and have something that other buildings will only be catching up to. So, our clients have become students of these qualities of buildings in wellness. And that is where we're going. We see building owners responding to that in various ways. I think we're going to see much more of that, more widely publicized.
And therefore, the upgrade cycle will continue from law firms who are in older space, who've been there for a decade or 2 decades, moving and upgrading to newer buildings because
right. And it healthy buildings is something that affects every workplace in every industry, in every office building. And law firms will, of course, be able to take advantage of the pressure that those industries are placing on building owners. And building owners are stepping up as well. They understand how important it is in the marketplace to have a healthy building to attract tenants.
Right. Well, Larry, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I don't want to take up any more of your valuable time. Before we go, how can listeners get in touch with you?
You can find Marner Architecture and our access to our website by simply Googling us at Marner Architecture. And I'd be very open to having conversations with any and all law firm leaders about these subjects.
Great. And we'll put your contact details in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for taking the time. This has been a really interesting conversation. It sounds like we're really in the middle of this. It's going to be very interesting to talk to you again in 18 months and see where we will be versus where we think we are now. And it's clearly a very dynamic and changing marketplace. Right. So with that, again, my name is Greg Cohen, and this has been Conversations with Cohen. If you like this, please don't hesitate to put a comment down below, and make sure you subscribe for all future episodes. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Larry.